As the oldest running sedan in Nissan's North American lineup, the company would like you to think that the Maxima is still very important to them. In the nearly 40 years since it's been on sale, we've seen 8 generations of this four-door sports car, at least that's what Nissan likes to call it, with the current generation debuting back in 2016. So for 2019, in response to the new competition from the Avalon and Kia Cadenza, Nissan has given the Maxima a pretty subtle refresh. And today we're going to find out if this is still the four-door sports car that Nissan wants you to think it is. So it's been nearly 3 years since I've shown you guys the current 8th generation Maxima, and back then I thought it was a really nice premium sedan that had a really unique look to it, especially when you looked at the rest of the bland full-size sedans in the segment. Now you can see for 2019, Nissan is tweaking the exterior ever so slightly for this 19 Maxima. The biggest change, the headlights. These multi-reflector full LED headlights are standard equipment across the board. Before you had to get a top trim. These headlights seriously remind me of what you get on a lot of top trim Honda and Acura products. You have the Nissan signature LED running light, LED turn signals, and then LED fog lights. The grille, the V-Motion grille, hasn't really been changed all that much. It has kind of a dark chrome finish. The radar sensor for the adaptive cruise control is behind the Nissan badge. And then overall, it kind of has that traditional Nissan look with the V-Motion grille. It definitely will stand out in this segment. That's one thing that the Maxima has always been good at, is kind of blurring the line between what you expect a full-size sedan to be and a premium sedan. Now you can see in terms of the wheel sizes, this SR trim rides on 19-inch wheels with a black finish. Now these wheels are about 10 millimeters larger than what you're going to find. It's riding on 245/40 series tires. Usually other sedans in this segment have a 235 width tire. So these are a little bit fatter to give the Maxima a little bit more grip, and it also makes the Maxima look a little bit better as it sits, you know, while it's sitting still, because again, it was supposed to be a four-door sports car. Now the Maxima size is definitely interesting in the Nissan lineup because its wheelbase at 109.3 and an overall length of 192.9 inches long. This is actually shorter than the current generation Altima, the all-new one. So even though this is supposed to be above the Altima, it's not necessarily larger. That's the thing about the Maxima that makes it a unique entry in the marketplace. Of course, it also has that signature floating roof design, which I don't really like this rear quarter view of the Maxima. It just kind of looks a little bit strange. It works a little bit better on Nissan's crossovers, just not so sure I like it on the Maxima. Now at the back, you can see the rear has also been slightly redone. It's got tweaked full LED taillights with a slightly new shape. The SR trim has this black finished rear lip spoiler, and then all Maximas now get the quad tipped exhaust, which actually isn't even connected to the bumper of the car. It's actually just a little finisher piece. There's only one exhaust behind it, but I'll let you guys hear that V6 really quick. And the V6 has that typical raspy VQ noise. It actually isn't even a sport-tuned exhaust like it should be on the SR trim, but it sounds good nevertheless. Now, looking underneath the trunk capacity, the Maxima, because of its smaller size, does mean that you have a slightly smaller trunk than most of the competition. Nissan rates it at 14.3 cubic feet. That's about 2 cubic feet less than what you're going to get in most of this car's competitors. The seats fold down 60/40. It has a relatively large opening, but these little areas here do eat up into the cargo area. And then if you guys look underneath the floor here, Nissan still gives you a temporary spare tire, so you don't have to deal with a fix-a-flat kit. So obviously the outside of the 19 Maxima doesn't look all that different, but let's hop into the interior and see if Nissan made any changes. Now you can see here's the current old Nissan key fob. It's literally coming up on 20 years. This is actually standard, the intelligent access key. It does come with remote start, so just push the lock button once, push and hold this button at the top, and the vehicle will start right up for you. If you'd like to turn off the engine, you can do it from the remote. Just touch the top button again and hold it until the engine shuts off. Now, as you approach the door handle of the Maxima, you're gonna notice there's a button here on the outside of the handle. That basically will lock the doors for you if you push that button. If you wanna unlock it, Nissan doesn't do a sensor. You have to touch the button again, and that will unlock the door for you. Now, my particular SR trim has its own unique interior color combination. It looks great with the orange stitching, with the diamond quilted Alcantara, with the leather. These seats themselves are heated and cooled. They're 10-way power adjustable with a 2-person memory over there. So the interior is very Infiniti-like, and Nissan didn't really make any changes to the design. They didn't really need to, but it is a little bit on the cozier side. If you guys prefer a beige leather, or you can also get an orange leather, you can basically upgrade to the platinum trim. And that'll get you a different combination if you guys don't want the black. Now, getting into the inside of the Maxima, it definitely has a low step-in height. It feels a little bit lower than the last Altima that I drove, the new one. And then when you want to shut the door, it sounds solid, but not quite as solidly sounding as what you get in the new Altima. So let's just keep that in mind. Now, to start the vehicle up, just put your foot on the brake here, and then push this button here to fire up the engine. Now the gauges do a nice sweep. There's a nice little helper screen in the center there. This is Nissan's VQ35DE V6. It's really quick revving, and Nissan actually doesn't even give you a red line, or you can rev it all the way up to its red line in park if you guys want to listen to that engine all day long. Now, looking at the rest of this interior, you can see the first thing that kind of catches my eye is the stitching here on this dash. It is a faux stitching. This is a soft touch injection molded plastic. It all feels really nice and high quality. The stitching over the instrument panel, though, is real stitching. This is the same leather that's over the seats and then the door panels. This upper part of the door panel is also soft touch with more of that faux stitching. You have one touch express up-down windows for just the front windows, not for the rear. Kind of wish Nissan just made it for the rear as well. You have a padded armrest right here, a nice little area here where you have a grab handle, and then there's a little bit more storage down here where you have 2 cup holders, and it's all hard touch plastic. Now the steering wheel, you can see here, it's suede Alcantara. It's a heated wheel. You have controls here for your cruise control, for the adaptive cruise control. You have steering wheel mounted, you have column mounted paddles, which are definitely nice. They're very GTR-esque. If you guys want paddles in a Maxima, you have to go for the SR trim. The lower trims of the Maxima simply do not have paddle shifters. The wheel itself is just a manual tilt telescoping. The Platinum trim is the one that gives you the full power tilt telescoping, so that's something to keep in mind. The center stack here, this is basically the newest feature for 2019. Push the Apple CarPlay display there, and you can see you've got Apple CarPlay and you've got Android Auto. This is new. When the Maxima first launched, it didn't have this feature. This is basically the 8-inch touchscreen that is standard equipment. It does also have embedded navigation, but as you can see, it's the much older navigation display versus what we've seen in the other newer Nissan products. It works fine, but most of you, I imagine, are probably just going to go to menu, go to CarPlay, and then just pull up the Waze that you have in your phone, since that's what people end up liking to use anyways. It's one of the reasons why Nissan added this feature. Going to the menu display, you can see you can kind of customize the icons in here. The Nissan navigation system works fairly well. Quick responding, you can turn on and off that beep. It also has a wireless hotspot, which is nice. You can go into the settings here, you can customize all this other stuff over here. The camera system, you guys push the camera button, you can see there's a 360 camera top-down view. It's part of a premium package for $1,800 that my tester has. The resolution is definitely a little bit on the crunchy, grainy side, but you do have moving object detection with rear automatic braking, so that's definitely a nice feature to have. The audio system, as you can see, it'll go to your phone audio system there, unless you guys go back here to your traditional sources, and it'll show you all your different usual presets over there. You can adjust that to your liking. Dual zone climate control is included on this trim. Most of them will have it as standard. There's a good area here where you can plug in your phone. You have a USB-C and a USB port and an aux port over there, which is nice. All this piano black plastic trim definitely looks good. You have this satin dark aluminum look trim on this SR model, which has a textured look. If you guys prefer wood, there's also a faux wood available. It definitely looks interesting. The cup holders are down here. You have this Infiniti-like controller over here for the infotainment system. which honestly, this is better than what you get in some Infiniti products. This controls the Xtronic CVT transmission. You also have a manual mode on the shifter here. And then on this trim, you also get heated and cooled seats controlled by this little dial, which is definitely nice. The center console here is pretty large. You have a good amount of storage. There's no USB, just a power outlet in there. It's a nice padded armrest, and then you have real leather stitching on the side here of the center console, which is nice. The seats are also pretty comfortable, a little bit on the harder side, but love the suede Alcantara. If you guys don't like suede, the other trims will have a full leather. The glove compartment is pretty big, actually. It's massive. You have a felt-lined damped lid, which is definitely nice. So decent storage over there. Above you, this panoramic sunroof is optional, part of an $1,800 premium package. I wish it kind of went all the way to the back here. I wish there wasn't this little area here, but nevertheless, nice that Nissan throws that in. I'm noticing they're missing kind of like a head-up display, which would have been nice to have, but overall, there's very little features that this car is actually missing. Now, because of the Maxima's smaller size, the rear seat is definitely a lot smaller than what you expect a full-size sedan to be. But getting back here, Nissan actually rates the legroom at around 34.3 inches. That is roughly about 6 inches less than what you're going to get in most of the competition. The floor here is almost flat, which is nice for 3 people across. There's actually a USB-C and a regular USB port, which surprised me. You have rear seat air vents, and then you have 2 map pockets. Now, in terms of the actual space, I'm 5'7". I'm pretty comfortable back here, but again, you do feel the tight quarters. The panoramic sunroof above me does add in some nice light. You have really nice soft touch materials throughout the rear seats, so they didn't cheap out. One thing I am noticing, this particular trim is missing no heated rear seats and then no rear sunshades. You can get that on the top of the line Platinum Reserve trim if you guys want. Now, there is a nice little armrest that folds down, gives you a little bit of storage, 2 cup holders, but overall, the back seat is definitely nice, but keep in mind, a lot of mid-size sedans offer more space than this Maxima. Now, under the hood of the 2019 Maxima, Nissan also didn't make any changes to this vehicle. And while the engine is still a 3.5-liter V6 with just port injection, it's the same VQ35DE engine. It makes 300 horsepower, 261 foot-pounds of torque. It all goes out through a continuously variable transmission. The one thing that Nissan should have changed is they should have added all-wheel drive to this vehicle. It's still a front-wheel drive car, whereas the Altima now offers all-wheel drive. Of course, that's limited to the base engine, but it's just confusing to me why Nissan decided not to put all-wheel drive in this vehicle. Nevertheless, it's still a 300 horsepower front-wheel drive family sedan with Nissan's current generation Xtronic CVT. It weighs around 3,500 pounds, maybe 3,600 pounds, depending on the trim level you get. Fuel economy is actually also not too bad. It's rated at 20 in the city, 30 on the highway. Nissan requires that you put premium gas in this engine, so be sure to do so. So it's been about 3 years since I drove this generation of Maxima, and back then, it was like in 2015, I thought it was still a very pleasant driving sedan. Not really the 4-door sports car that Nissan wants you to think that it is, but still a very competent and pleasant driving premium sedan for sure. As you can see, that tradition kind of carries on for this 2019 model. Nissan didn't really make any changes to the powertrain or the suspension. This SR version is the sportiest Maxima that you can buy, and the CVT transmission, as much as I hate them, it's surprisingly good in this Maxima. I mean, when you pair it with the company's VQ V6, it is really responsive. This car still feels very quick, and it's still front-wheel drive. I wish Nissan would do an all-wheel drive version, but as you can see here, when you find some twisty back roads, the car will hold its own, and the Maxima's smaller size definitely makes this a much more playful full-size sedan. It's not even really considered a full-size since this car is now a 1/10 of an inch shorter than the new Altima. But the car feels heavy, it feels buttoned down. The steering is a little bit on the light side, although it's quick and precise enough. The brakes are also a little bit touchy. Nissan brakes tend to be a little bit on the touchier side. But for a front-wheel drive sedan, the Maxima can certainly still hustle. Not necessarily a 4-door sports car, again, but not a bad driving full-size vehicle either. Now, being front-wheel drive, you do notice that it has a little bit of torque steer. There's some slight tugging at the wheel, and the front tires will do a burnout if you guys really put your foot down hard. But the CVT, which still doesn't make the most attractive noises when it's just holding the revs, really where you judge a CVT is not in the sound department. It's not supposed to sound all that impressive. Where you judge a CVT is in the responsiveness. So right now, my foot goes to the floor, and it's really quick to pull down a ratio, the engine goes into the meat of the power band, and then it kind of will mimic shifts. Nissan does a good job at their Xtronic with the 6-cylinder, and this car feels like it'll get to 60 in just under 6 seconds, maybe like 5.9 seconds. It's one of the quicker entries in the segment. This is quicker than the new Toyota Avalon, quicker than the Kia Cadenza, and despite the fact that it has a CVT, it also gets better gas mileage. In my week's worth of testing, I've been averaging around 26 miles to the gallon in mixed driving, a little bit better than what the EPA predicts at 24 mpg. Now the steering in this car, as I said, it is definitely quick ratio, but it could be a little bit heavier. I wish it was just offered a little bit more feedback through the tires. It's a little bit on the numb side. The body leans a good amount, but you can tell Nissan has tuned this SR version to be a little bit sportier. And honestly, you don't really get tired of just wanting to put your foot down in this car. The V6 is a little bit on the raspier side. It has that typical VQ drone. Not as smooth and refined as what you get in the Honda J series or the Toyota V6 engines, but it's still a very potent engine. So glad to see that Nissan has kept this naturally aspirated V6 in the Maxima. And that's the key differentiation between this and the Altima now, is because the Altima is only a 4-cylinder now. You can get, you know, a V6 still with the Maxima, but still no all-wheel drive. Now, in terms of the drivability, the visibility in this car is not quite as good as some competitors. The pillar here is on the thick side. The hood has these interesting bulges, so your visibility is a little bit terrible from the front. From the side, it's okay. From the rear, the view out of the back is good because the window is large. The driver assistance is not standard on the Maxima. You do have emergency automatic braking as standard, but if you want intelligent cruise control, you want blind spot, rear cross-driver braking, you have to go up to an SV, SR, and then the fully loaded trims to get that. Nissan's Pro Pilot Assist also is not available in this car, so it's their older driver assistance tech. This also does have pedestrian detection, but just keep in mind the Maxima is an older platform, so you're going to notice that. Now, the ride quality is also an area where the SR trim makes itself known. This is a firmer ride than what I expect a full-size sedan to be. And honestly, I need to stop calling this thing a full-size sedan because it doesn't feel like a full-size sedan in terms of the interior space. It has a bumpy ride quality. So if you guys are looking for a little bit of a softer ride quality, I would highly suggest test driving the Platinum trim or the SL trim, because the SR with its 19-inch wheels and its sport-tuned suspension does transmit a fair amount of bumps into the cabin that some competitors definitely won't. Now, this car does have paddle shifters, and then there's also a sport mode here, which I've had it in sport. The SR trim is the only trim to give you paddles. It offers 7 different ratios, which they don't really do a really great job with mimicking gears. It kind of has that fake CVT ratio adjustment, and it's very slow to rev match on your downshift. So the paddles, while they are nice because they're mounted to the column, they're just plastic paddles. They're not the same like wonderful stuff you find like on a Nissan GTR. But nevertheless, I'm glad that Nissan threw in some paddles, but if you're gonna give us paddles, give us a stepped automatic. See, like when you pull the paddle, it's really lazy to actually adjust the ratio and shift. So I find myself not even wanting to use the paddles, and we're just gonna leave it in drive mode and leave it in sport setting. Now, in terms of quietness, the Maxima is not as quiet as some of the competitors. There is a fair amount of road noise that creeps in, slight wind noise. You do hear the engine whenever you put your foot down hard, but I did also hear a couple of squeaks and rattles coming from the rear and from the roof of this vehicle. So again, a little bit concerning considering this is supposed to be Nissan's flagship sedan. They really need to work on just improving the overall ambiance in this cabin. It's got a nice premium looking interior, but in terms of the rest of the feel, like from the ride quality to the noise levels to the overall structure, it could do to be beefed up significantly considering this is where this is in Nissan's lineup. And that leaves me with my final thoughts with the Maxima, because this sedan honestly hasn't changed in the last 3 years, and that's the thing, is the full-size or premium sedan market, or the sedan market in general, has completely shifted. I think what Nissan needs to do is they need to make the Maxima the next generation all-wheel drive for sure. Perhaps even give it that hatchback liftback body style that the Kia Stinger has, for example. I could see Nissan completely turning this vehicle into like a Kia Stinger competitor. And the problem is, I think why they haven't done it is because if they put the 3-liter twin-turbo V6 from the Q50 in this thing, it's going to render the Q50 kind of obsolete. So Nissan needs to definitely work on where they're going to position the Maxima, because where it is now, it's a little bit of a confused vehicle, and really the only reason why you'd buy one of these is because it's, you know, it's got a 6-cylinder engine and you just really happen to like the Maxima and you like the design and you like the name of this vehicle. And right here is the reason why the Maxima just desperately needs all-wheel drive, so hoping that Nissan puts it in the next generation. Not really much in terms of torque steer, but the fact that it keeps spinning the tires when you turn the traction control off is the reason why Nissan seriously needs to put all-wheel drive in this thing. So at the beginning of this review, I asked a simple question. Is the Maxima still the four-door sports car that Nissan wants you to think that it is? Well, after spending the week with the refreshed 2019 model, it clearly is not a four-door sports car. A four-door sports car needs to be rear-wheel drive. It needs to have a dual clutch or manual transmission. It needs to be a lot more hard edge. And the Maxima still isn't any of those things, but what it is still a very nice driving, premium looking full-size sedan that isn't really a full-size, that surprisingly still does relatively well for them in terms of sales. Nissan managed to move about 3,500 of these Maximas in January of 2019, which is actually double the number that Toyota sold of their Avalon, which is based on an all-new generation. So with all that said, where does it leave the 2019 Maxima if you guys are looking for something like this? Well, thankfully, as you guys saw, it's still a relatively sporty driving vehicle that isn't really sporty enough to justify the harsh ride quality that I noticed in this vehicle. It also has a little bit more interior noise. So what I would like Nissan to do for the next generation is move the Maxima onto an all-wheel drive, rear drive platform, maybe even give it a hatchback utility, kind of like a Kia Stinger. I think if Nissan made this Maxima reborn like what Kia did with the Stinger, I think it would really solidify the Maxima's place in Nissan's sedan hierarchy as their flagship vehicle. It doesn't necessarily need to have more interior space than the Altima, but what it does need to offer is just a level of specialness that the Maxima has kind of been lacking for the last couple of years, considering the fact that the old one used to offer a manual transmission, and they desperately need to put all-wheel drive in this car. But despite all of my quibbles with the car, what does it cost to actually put a 2019 model in your driveway if you guys are looking to purchase one? Well, this car starts at $33,900 for the base S trim. Now keep in mind the S trim has cloth seats. Most competitors have leather. Most of you are going to spring up to the SV trim for another $2,000. That adds the leather heated seats. It adds the intelligent cruise control and the upgraded infotainment system. That one is right around $36,000. My tester being the SR trim starts at around $38,000 plus a $2,000 premium package that rolls in that panoramic sunroof and the 360 camera and the rear cross traffic braking. This one all in stickers for around $42,500, which makes it a pretty good deal surprisingly in this segment. And I'm imagining a lot of Nissan dealers are discounting the Maxima significantly, which is probably why they've been able to still sell a fairly good amount of these. It is probably the best-selling import full-size sedan in the American market. It outsells the Cadenza and the Avalon in January of 2019. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2019 Nissan Maxima SR. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.